My name is Andrea, and I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. My daughter, Victoria, has Langerhans cell histiocytosis. She was diagnosed with it at 9 months old, and she's currently 4 years old. From the moment we found a bump on her head to the time we were told she had LCH was maybe a month, and but that's because about 2 weeks of that period was monitoring the bumps, not sure if it was gonna go down and what it was, but once we actually had an X-ray, we were diagnosed probably within or had the preliminary diagnosis within a couple of days. I would say the when we received the phone call from her pediatrician that she had something called lytic lesions and that we would be needing to follow up with an oncologist, that was the moment that we knew everything was changing, our whole routine, our whole schedule, everything that we thought was going to happen with the infant that was out the window. We receive treatment at East Tennessee Children's Hospital, but our team does get guidance from Texas Children's Hospital, but all our work is done here locally. With histiocytosis, because my daughter's diagnosis is Langerhans, I usually just focus more on Langerhans. But in general, I'll describe LCH as when you have a buildup of histiocytes, which we all have in our bodies, and then there's a mutation that occurs, and all those mutated cells cluster together. They work in partner with the cells that kind of respond with the immune system, and then together they kind of wreak havoc on the body. So depending on where those cells mutate is where it kind of helps determine what part of the body that's going to be impacted. And so it can cause bone degradation or organ damage depending on where those LCH cells are. Oh, that's hard. So histio, I usually start out by telling histio, especially LCH in particular. I guess I'll focus a little bit more on that. It is a type of cancer. Is usually the first way I explain that to someone. I know there's a lot of information out there, a lot of different debates in the past, but I think that's been clarified now. But I think it helps to understand, for me at least, that once I need a starting point to help understand what we're dealing with. And once I understand that, then it helps me figure out what I'm dealing with and how to navigate the process. So, with my daughter's diagnoses, she was very young, and it was at the age where most kids are learning to taste their first foods and learn to eat. So, with her, because she was receiving chemo, she rejected a lot of foods right away. So our reality right now and how it's impacted our family largely, in addition to the treatments, the medical schedules, all the appointments, um, was the fact that she wasn't eating. So she has a feeding tube, a nasogastric feeding tube, so it goes through her nose into her stomach, and so that has been the hardest adjustment because it's like continuing to feed an infant because you have to feed her on a schedule every 3 4 hours, so much formula in addition to nighttime continuous feeds. So there's a lot of, for us, adjustment to our work schedules of being able to go run and feed her at daycare and then come back home and in the evenings and make sure we're always feeding her. If we're out and about doing something, we have to watch what time it is. Did she eat? Did she not? Thankfully, she's beginning to slowly eat a few foods, not enough to sustain her, but still, that's been part of a big challenge. And like I said, just the checkups, we're still under monthly monitoring. So we go to the doctors, and those are taking up most of the day when we go there to do labs or follow up evaluations with specialists. Those things have been a big adjustment on us because our schedule seems like we go month to month sometimes with the appointments, but for the most part with the feeding, that's like a everlasting challenge. It seems like we're also working with a therapist, an occupational therapist, as well as a feeding therapist to help her overcome this, whatever it is that's keeping her from eating, whether it's just a sensitivity to the food or at this point just an intolerance. We're not quite sure, but that also cuts into a lot of our time with work. So I think that's been the biggest challenge is kind of balancing the work, home life, and medical all together. Well, regarding communication with our physician, we've had multiple physicians, but I've learned that when you're first diagnosed, you're just kind of thrown a wealth of information. And so I'm the type that would go look up information. And so it always felt like for a while I was asking questions in hindsight after the fact. So now I've kind of learned how to navigate the system a little so I can prepare myself ahead of time to ask the right questions. For example, we have on the patient portal, sometimes her labs or some of her test results will pop up before we actually meet with the physicians. So I can take a look at that and then have my questions ready because I found out that, if you don't ask, you're not going to know. They won't, you have to continually sometimes pull out that information from the doctors. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. Don't be afraid to question, hey, why are you doing this particular treatment or given this particular medicine? Or just to not be afraid to bring up a question about her health because sometimes you'll notice something happening, you're not sure. There's the anxiety and the quick to panic. Oh my gosh, are we relapsing again? Or is this happening is because of the treatment or medication that she's having? And so there's always that fear and that anxiety that occurs throughout treatment and even post treatment. So don't be afraid to ask those questions because they're really willing to answer those, give you answers and help support you. And then some doctors, you will run into the few that don't really like to be questioned. And so then you just kind of learn how to readjust your questions and change your style of communication to get the results, to get the answers you need. So I would say don't always just focus on one style of communication. You might have to adjust and adapt depending on the doctors that you are working with. So for me, I draw a lot of my hope one from Victoria because she teaches me resiliency and hope and all that. But also, I have a good support system, both locally as well as virtually. So locally, I've become friends with a lot of different cancer moms, and so we kind of support each other. We celebrate all the good accomplishments for everyone's kids, and that also gives hope. Hey, this could happen for my child, or they're doing well. There's good news down the road. Um, as far as histiocytosis, being connected in with the Histiocytosis Association has been a tremendous support system, a tremendous source for hope because there are a lot of folks that I've met that have battled LCH, whether as a child or as an adult, and they're doing great and wonderful. So that provides me a source of hope as well. Oh, geez. I guess my happy place really is just being in the good days and stuff with Victoria, just spending those moments with her when everything's going great. I've learned that I can probably handle a lot more than I thought I could. As when you're first given the diagnoses, you're especially as a caregiver, you're sitting there wondering, how am I going to get through this all? How can I handle everything else going on in my life? So we're fortunate because I mean the fact that Victoria is our only child, but I see a lot of families that have multiple kids that they're also having to deal with. But believe it or not, once you get started, it's amazing what you can do because I didn't realize I could do work full time through the treatments, be there in the hospital living with her and working and, juggling family life too. That was something I was not sure how I was going to do, but managed. And I've shown myself that I can do that. So I am, like I mentioned earlier, I was one that's always looking for answers and questions. I have a science background, so I needed to know relevant and good information regarding LCH in particular. So when I started just delving in, trying to look for information, I was trying to look for credible sources, and I found Histiocytosis Association. And on the website, there's a wealth of information regarding just from high up summaries on LCH to webinars about LCH that I was able to then kind of learn about. Um, and, just looking through the various resources they had from support groups to online that they've already streamed and they regulate, like groups from social media that you can follow and talk to others or ask and pose questions. It just took some looking online myself, and then that's how I just kind of stumbled upon Histiocytosis Association. And then once I started seeing all the information they had, I just kind of been nonstop. Even today, this many years into it, like if there's a change in her condition or something, I feel like I can look it up, research it. Hey, go back to the videos. Is there something new? Because they're always updating webinars. Or if I need to talk like with the support groups, I can reach out to that. One of the great things that's come out of this is that I've been able to become an ambassador with the Histiocytosis Association and connect with some wonderful folks out there that have battled either LCH or other forms of histiocytosis. And so that has been wonderful in the fact that I've learned that, hey, I'm not alone. There's others out there that we can rely on. If they can't help me, they know somebody else who's had a similar journey and they can connect me. And I think that connection to others that have had similar experiences has been very invaluable. I would have to go back and say you're not alone. It may feel like it, but there's really a community out there that you can reach out to, particularly through the Histiocytosis Association. And that community is there for you. They're not going to judge you, they're not going to question your calls when it comes to the medical. They're there to support you and help guide you through the journey. Oh, I think it's extremely important to let folks know about Victoria's journey in particular because I had never heard of histiocytosis before her diagnosis. I've heard of other types of cancers out there. I've heard about it impacting adults, but I wasn't really familiar with childhood cancer for one, but then second, histiocytosis. I had no clue. It's a rare disease, and so um, there's not a lot of information out there that's widely known. When I've told family members and friends that she had a histiocytosis, they were like, "What is that?" So I think it's important to make people aware that this exists because histiocytosis is also something I've learned by talking to others. It can be misdiagnosed at many times, or because a lot of physicians may not know what to look for. And so, if someone is aware, hey, this might be what's impacting my child, or might be impacting me as an adult, I think it's important to have that information for people to kind of ask their doctors, could this be what's impacting us? And it's also important to bring awareness to the medical community so that they're not misdiagnosing or they're not overlooking perhaps a symptom of histiocytosis. The way I raise awareness has been a lot lately through just even have informational tables at certain events, whether I hear of a child that's newly diagnosed with a form of histiocytosis and they're having like an event, a fundraiser, then try to set up a table so their friends and family are aware of what that child's diagnosis may be. We've done a lot of blood drives where we've handed out information on histiocytosis. I've been fortunate enough to, through the Children's Hospital, be able to go and present my daughter's journey to a number of different folks locally. So that's also raised awareness of what histiocytosis all entails and what she's been through. I've actually coming up soon for Histiocytosis Awareness Month is next week. I will be doing a little interview with a news station. Um, I couldn't quite get them to go blue, but we got them to go gold for childhood cancer because it also shares September's childhood cancer and histiocytosis awareness. But their way of getting histiocytosis out there is to kind of do a story on Victoria. So we will be doing an interview with them, and I guess I'll have to don both blue and gold together. But the new station will be going gold at least one day a week throughout the month of September. I'm still working on them to put on blue too. But it just takes little steps to get there. And I've found that because a lot of folks will gravitate to maybe doing something on childhood cancer rather than on one specific disease that falls under that umbrella. And so I have to take those little wins in order to get the awareness for histiocytosis out there. Victoria loves soccer. One of the activities that got her through treatment was kicking a soccer ball as she was connected to an IV pole around the floor over and over again. And the nurses would kick the ball with her, and that would just get her to do laps, do exercise, which helps the kids to overcome some of the impacts of treatment and neuropathy. And so at one point, One Knox Soccer, they're here locally, and they came out to visit Victoria during her last treatment. And so after she finished treatment, they wanted to do something for Histiocytosis Awareness Month. And so they let me set up a booth at one of their games. In addition, they made a video story of Victoria, which they aired at halftime. And then they had her come out to the field and just kind of wave to everybody. So she had a blast doing that. We had a lot of people stop by, but it was a way to target a large audience all at once and to let them know what histiocytosis was all about. We've been trying to coordinate another visit out to the stadium. I know one of the players who visited the hospital actually came out and gave her a hug during that September event. And he's stayed in communication with us. And he's actually told us, like, because Victoria's going to do fall soccer, let me know. He missed in the spring soccer, he missed the session because he wanted to go out and cheer her on. But he's invited us out to a game. So said we haven't been able to line up our schedules to go out to a game as his guest, but we're going to work on trying to do another booth out there in September if we can hopefully figure out a schedule. Other than saying my daughter is a rare disease hero, I would like to say that some of the heroes out there are the physicians themselves. In particular, the Tex team and Texas Children's. Dr. McLean has been wonderful, like just being able to get on their schedule in record time within a matter of call to a weeks. I call them and then within a couple of weeks, they're able to get me on. It's just a matter of logistics getting down there. They have been amazing, answering questions from afar, being able to communicate directly with the parents rather than having to go in and communicate only through our doctors who then relay information. I think that's been valuable. I also want to say that there's just all the different ambassadors that have actually battled histiocytosis themselves are heroes to me because they have gone through so much. They're still going through so much. I've met so many wonderful folks out there. Um, and then, of course, and here in East Tennessee, I've gotten to know some other Histio warriors. And to me, all those kids are heroes. Just to really just never give up, like, even in the hard times, just keep pursuing because sometimes when it looks a little dark, there's always, a light out there. And I think one of the biggest things, if I had to go back and say advice for those in the middle of the journey, is to don't be afraid to rely on help from others because I think that's the biggest thing that most people in the midst of it, they're like, "Oh, I don't need help. I'm okay. I got this." And it's okay to lean on other people. They want to help, so let them.